Hello there, friends, good people. I have something special for you, and it's a reaction. Another reaction video, right? Reacting to somebody else's video. So in this case, it's by the estimable Dan Willis, and let me switch over to the tab where I have that queued up. All right, and this video by Dan is called A Message from the Emissary and a Visualization to Affect the Planetary Matrix. The planetary matrix, affecting the planetary matrix, visualizing something to do that. So those are the points I want to focus on, and this is going to be a reaction in two parts because there are two parts to Dan's, or two parts of Dan's video that I want to focus on separately. I think that will work best. Now, the first part of the video, after a brief introduction by Dan, is a message from Elena Danan, and uh, I recommend you watch that if you want to. But I'm going to focus on the latter parts of the video that follow Elena's message. No disrespect to her or what she says intended at all. I think Dan presents it to get the mind of the listener conditioned, so to speak, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but the words Elena ends on, or the word is love, love, and that is the frequency or the emotion. Really, it's more than an emotion, so that's why I said frequency. But that's where the minds and hearts of the viewers can best be oriented at the point. So let's go into the part of the video where Dan is talking about the technique, and I will present this because I clicked on it, and there's a reason I clicked on it. I clicked at random, but here we have the point of the visualization, and this is a slide in Dan's presentation where he presents the idea. We know our planet has been technologically hijacked and deceived in secrecy for decades. Now, what does that mean? Technologically hijacked. It means that, well, for example, there have been innumerable patents for free energy devices. Yet we're told that this is impossible. This is equivalent to perpetual motion. And the patents have been stopped from implementation by a national security act in the United States, and there is a similar act in Canada that forbids disruptive technology from being developed. Let's talk about free energy for a moment. It's disruptive, of course, because it would stop the flow of profits to the oil companies and the energy companies in general. What if the production of energy were put in the hands of each individual with a very small device that would generate all the power that an individual would ever need? Clean electricity, too, not the kind that damages human health. And not necessarily just electricity. You could go perhaps directly to heat, which would be very useful in colder parts of our planet. If you want some entertaining education, look up videos on Yakutsk or Sakha, Sakha, in Siberia. It's a beautiful place, but it gets very, very cold there in the winter. And the people have adapted to it, and it's quite amazing. All right, but instead of having natural gas piped everywhere in Yakutsk, which is a city in Siberia, and in the surrounding areas, the rural areas, um, they could have little free energy devices. Well, I've gone off on a little digression, but I hope it was entertaining, and that if you follow up on it, you'll be further entertained and educated, as I said. So I love edutainment. I hope this channel is going to be edutaining. Anyway, the second line of Dan's slide here says, "A beautiful new world that is not fantasy or science fiction awaits to be claimed." So the visualization to be embedded in the planetary matrix is that of a beautiful future. Now, I know some of my friends who've been my friends for several years uh, think about that a lot. And we've thought about it in a way that didn't bring ETs into the picture. And that's okay. We were ignorant. We were uninformed. Let's get informed, however, because the ET aspect is reality as well. And anybody who tells you otherwise, whether they know it or not, is helping the deep state in their agenda to keep that under wraps, and to deceive people into thinking that there are no ETs that could affect humanity in a good way. So that's too bad, because I think some of those people don't want to be doing that. They're presenting themselves, and probably quite authentically, in the light that they want to defeat the cabal, the deep state, you could go on, globalist extremists, and so on, as much as anybody, maybe more than most. But let's move on here. I want to talk about the planetary matrix. What is that? Well, as has been brought out in several places where it's mentioned, in the material that is either directly from the Galactic Federation of Worlds or other benevolent ETs. The Galactic Federation is not the be all and end all. They have allies. They have allies and other groups that work with them. And some of those groups have been contacting people on Earth. So the message of, in general, the benevolent ETs, has been expressed through a number of, I will say, channels, although I don't mean that they engage in channeling as a routine. But um, this information talks about, in some parts, the planetary matrix, which means wherever you have a planet that is alive, and life exists on that planet, this creates a situation, or it's a mutual feedback loop. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Really, it's a matter of both coming into being at basically the same time, as far as I understand things. And the planet has a consciousness. The planet has a mind, a super mind, a super consciousness. The planet could be called a god or a goddess, right? It's a divine being, or it's vastly superior in intelligence and power to any individual life form that lives on the planet, including humanity, and human individuals, humanity as a whole, even. So, will will humanity ever catch up with the Earth in intelligence? There was a question that came up once with a friend of mine, or a couple of friends who were discussing things, and one of them said, "I wonder if humanity will ever collectively become an aeon, or a god." Right? Aeon is a Gnostic word for superior beings that are in the hierarchy of creator beings. so to speak. And so the answer to the question was, I never thought of that, right? That's the way I understand the conversation went. I was just told this, so I'm a third party who wasn't there. But it's an interesting question. Or humanity as a whole could become a godlike being. And this has been explored in science fiction as well. This idea, and I'm not saying it's true, but we can certainly develop our consciousness to the point that, well, since I've gone down this path, I'm digressing once again. I'll allow myself to do that, and I appreciate your tolerance when I do it. But humans individually are walking stargates. At least potentially we are that. And there are some among us who have developed the ability to teleport themselves from one place to another. And there are some among us who have developed the ability to materialize a thought form version of themselves somewhere else without teleporting. So that is bilocation. That's physical bilocation. And if you've ever read the book Autobiography of a Yogi, you would remember that Yogananda's um, Yogananda's mentor, who I believe was Sri Yukteswar, was able to do that. And that's, you can read the book and say, well, I don't know if that's real. But there are many other, well, not many, there are at least a few other instances of people who have definitely had that ability. And I had somebody tell me over lunch once, or not over lunch, actually, it was at a later meeting, but he was telling me about someone he used to know that could do that. The man was Egyptian, and he said you could be walking and talking with him, and he would not have anything in his hands. And you could look away for a couple of seconds and look back, and he would have an Egyptian newspaper in his hand. How did he get that? Well, he teleported to Cairo, bought it, and teleported back before you could look at him again. That was the story. You know, that's what my friend or my acquaintance really, I would say, swore was the truth. Well, he didn't swear, but he expected you to believe whatever he said. It's like I live by principles of honesty and integrity, so I don't care what I tell you. If it seems fantastical, too bad. You can believe that it's true. That's a subject I want to make another video on because it actually goes deep and it's important. So, how do you affect the planetary matrix, embed a visualization of, say, a more beautiful future into the planetary matrix? Now, there are various techniques, and some have developed them. Some humans here on Earth have developed techniques for doing this. The planetary matrix, it's what we call, most people call Gaia. The Gnostics had another name for it, which was Sophia. And some people pronounce that as Sophia so that it rhymes with Gaia, and you can combine the words and say Gaia Sophia, like a two-part name. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that entity. And that entity is directly involved in emanating progressively, moment to moment, the reality that we experience individually and as a species. So you want to embed your visualization. It's somewhere between a request and a command. It really functions as a command because if it's successfully embedded, then she knows this is what my human children on the surface of this planet and perhaps beneath the surface as well. There are probably a lot of people living underground, maybe millions. But at any rate, this is what they want, or this is what a collective group of them agree that they want. And that agreement is very important. This being, Gaia, Sophia, is much more intelligent than we are, and she's much more powerful. So how is it that we can command her? Well, it's just by putting an idea in her mind. She's got a lot to manage. Look, she's taking care of the insects laying eggs, and the trees pulling water up through their roots from under the ground, and photosynthesis. She's got her. Some of that may happen on autopilot. I'm not saying it doesn't, but even the autopilot function wouldn't work without her constant attention. So she's the queen of multitasking. Trillions, quadrillions probably, of different processes. She has little portions of her psyche managing all of those. So if a group of us work together, or it doesn't have to be at the same time. Yes, there are meditations where large groups of people via the internet join together and visualize peace, or they visualize, an end to hunger, or an end to disease, things like that. And that affects the matrix. That points us in the direction of those things actually happening. And if you visualized, I'm going to become ruler of the world and everybody's going to be my slave, or our little group is going to be rulers of the world and everybody's going to be our slave. Well, yeah, there are probably people that think along those lines. Well, we know there are people who think along those lines in concert. But is that going to affect the planetary matrix? Well, probably not, because that being is sane, humane, loving. She can also be ruthless, and she can be destructive when it's necessary. She's a warrior goddess, okay? And what is she a warrior for? For truth, for goodness, and things like that, right? Benefit to her planetary children, which is really all of life. Now, I came across an idea, and I'll inject it here, where somebody was saying that her consciousness can be upgraded as well, so that eventually the prey-predator relationship will be transformed, and there will be no need for one animal to kill another animal to live. And then even beyond that, perhaps we'll get over preying on the plants, because when you think about how we nourish our bodies, we take something that is alive and thriving and happy. And I'm going to speak of plants as having emotions here. So there's a happy carrot, and there's a happy potato, and there's a happy tomato plant. And what do? We exploit them. We take their fruits, or we rip the whole plant out of the ground in the case of a carrot or a potato, typically. We partake of this as food for ourselves, and we have to do that, as far as we know. Now, there have been cases of inedia, which means people who don't eat, and we're going to go in that direction. Maybe all the creatures on the planet will be able to draw energy directly from the ether, or from sunlight, or which is indirectly from the ether. We'll see how that turns out. You can include that in your visualization if you want to, especially if you have vegan tendencies or vegetarian tendencies and you're against hurting the innocent animals, or even the innocent plants. And you would give up eating if you could. Or perhaps there would be occasions when you'd walk by a tree and the tree would invite you to partake of its fruit. Have a peach, have a tomato, have an avocado, have a durian, It's my gift to you, dear human. Well, I don't know if other people's minds wander into thinking of scenarios like that, but my mind has done that. Let's go on with the discussion. So there is this particular means by which this can be done. Now it's done with your consciousness. You can do it with your unaided consciousness, but it's more effective and easier and makes a deeper impression if you use certain tools. Dr. Marcel Vogel of IBM, who's passed away some years ago, had as his avocation investigation of the properties and abilities of crystals and how they could be used as tools to amplify intention in human consciousness. Dan Willis has taken up Dr. Vogel's work and carried it farther. And this is partly a scientific experimental process. But in the last couple of years, Dan has been talking through Elena Danaan with a Pleaidean scientist, Jen Han Eredyon. And Jen Han is the younger brother of Elena's principal contact, Thorhan, who is the commander of the Galactic Federation fleet that is in the solar system now and has been for a while. So Jen Han is also a crystal scientist, but the applications of crystals that are known to the Arahel, the Pleiadians, who it's a race and a planetary population. There are also Tal, which is a cousin race of the Ahel, who also inhabit the same planet, Era, and they're not limited to those planets, but there are some Tal on the Era as well. So these are human. They're called human-like. I think they're human. I mean, they can interbreed with Earth humans very easily, and the results are usually excellent. Having hybrids in the population is in some ways an upgrade. It's an upgrade to them and an upgrade to us. So these are very beautiful white people. The Tal tend to be darker haired, darker eyed, and the Hell are blonde haired, blue eyed, and they're called Nordic. Not because they're from the northern regions of Earth, but they resemble those people. They resemble the Swedes, the Norwegians, the Finns, the Sami, perhaps, the Laplanders. Is that the same as Sami? It could be. Probably is. I'm not the world's greatest expert in those matters. So anyway, Jen Han is a young man by Arahel standards, and those people live for hundreds or perhaps thousands of years. So he's probably a lot older than he looks, but he's still young by their standards. Now, Dan talks about how 1,700 people got together and did this visualization that he's describing via an internet meetup. And when they did this meditation, there was a detected spike in the Schumann resonance, which means it's a scientific proof that she got the message. Our beautiful planetary mother got the message that they were trying to embed. So what were they doing? Well, they were using this technique, and these words are due to Jen Han. You can do this with your mind alone, or you can augment your imprinting into the planetary matrix using a glass of water or a natural crystal, as both are interdimensional bridges. Does this mean that we are in one dimension and the planetary animal mother is in another dimension? The mind of the Earth, the planetary matrix, Gaia, is she in another dimension? not necessarily. I believe her mind, her psyche is multidimensional, just as a quartz crystal is multidimensional. So there are different dimensional analogs of Earth. There's a version of me in this dimension, and there are many other dimensions with other versions of me in them. And there's a technique that humans use, and I don't know if it works from personal experience, but many people think it does. It's called quantum jumping. But the idea is that you can connect with your alternate self in another dimension and learn from that version of yourself. Well, why do I think that there are other dimensions and that the mother's mind is multidimensional? There are other dimensions, and this is pretty well proved. You could look up uh, videos about this. I think it was a gentleman named Peter who was British, and um, his consciousness and his entire self, as far as we know, he was nearly struck by lightning, and when this happened, he disappeared, and he came to, so to speak, when he regained consciousness. He had lost his memory, and so he ended up in a hospital. And there was quite a story, but he had to borrow a pair of pants to move around, and the hospital, after a few days, allowed him to take walks around the area. And when he was taking a walk, wearing borrowed pants, he wandered into this area where things seemed to be shifting, and he caught glimpses of another world as he was looking around. And then he lost consciousness, and when he came to, he was in his backyard back in our world. And and he had regained his memory of what happened. So, and he retained the memory of what happened when he was in the other dimension. Well, this became a well-known story and was documented. The pair of pants that he was wearing were made by a tailor, and the tailor had gone out of business more than a decade before. But the pants were brand new. So this was an extremely anomalous situation, right? And couldn't be explained, really, by any other supposition than the idea that he had gone into another dimension where the tailor was still in business. And also there was a doctor and a nurse that he had interacted with at the hospital, and he found the same hospital in this dimension. He hadn't known it was there, but he learned that it actually existed. It was in a neighboring town. And he went to the hospital and talked to the same doctor and the same nurse, and they had absolutely no memory of him. So that's an example not only of a story of somebody going into a parallel world and coming back, but there's profound evidence that it really happened. There's physical evidence, you know, and evidence involving people and their memories. So, also remote viewers. I remember watching, a briefing on a remote viewing session, and one of the viewers, in what they were viewing, there was a UFO, and the remote viewer said, "This craft can move between dimensions." And he said, "I got the vision of a table with many sheets of paper lying on it, and those sheets of paper are dimensions. And this craft could go up and down through that stack and stop at any point in one of the dimensions." So there's a lot of good evidence for this. So yeah, a quartz crystal or many types of crystals exist across dimensions, and many dimensions, or all dimensions. Quartz in particular exists in all dimensions. So if you find a quartz crystal in nature, or you have one that's been cut, and I'll show you mine, then it exists in all dimensions. And maybe if you have a cut crystal like this one, there you go. It could exist in natural form, uncut, in other dimensions. I don't know. I don't know all the details. But it could also exist in cut form in multiple dimensions. So that crystal I just showed you is a clear quartz crystal without inclusions. Um, so sometimes there are what you would call imperfections or misty, shady looking areas inside the crystal. That one is a clean one. And if they have inclusions, it's okay. It doesn't um, cause the crystal to be less effective. But that was what is called a Vogel Eredyon cut crystal. So it has characteristics due to Marcel Vogel's work and due to the knowledge passed down to humanity as a gift by Jen Han Eredyon. So Jen Han goes on to say here, further enhanced augmentation can be with a Vogel cut crystal or for highly advanced augmentation that opens up a vortex singularity eye in the crystal, where he says you can use that to project your consciousness anywhere in any universe, any dimension, any density. So you can project your consciousness such that you can have, in effect, a face-to-face meeting of the minds, not face-to-face in physical reality, but, you know, it's very effective in getting that communication going with the planetary matrix. So the augmentation, which is what you do with the crystal, opens up a vortex singularity eye in the crystal to modify the holographic matrix, the matrix of reality. And that is done with the Vogel Eredyon cut crystal. It has the additional power necessary to do that. And Dan says there will be another discussion later on about how to use that technique. So he's not going to teach that in this particular video. And so he goes on and talks about exactly how to use a Vogel cut crystal or a glass of water. So the part I also want to make a video on separately is the visualization itself, and I want to talk about some aspects of that. And Dan has a prescription, so he's developed his visualization, but he invites you or me or anybody else that does it to modify that, make it personal, personalize it, modify, delete, add features, right? So we're coming to the end here. I've talked for a while. Thank you for listening. 33 minutes, almost 34. And I'm going to try to keep most of my videos down to 30 minutes or less. Maybe some will run a little bit over, but I would go over an hour if I went through the visualization as well. So we'll do that separately. Okay. You can go watch the video. Once again, when I'm doing a review or a reaction, I'm not going to play the video. It's up to you to go watch it. I will give you a link in the description of my video. And similarly, I may talk about information that's in written form on the web pages, or downloadable PDFs and things like that. Well, it's up to you to go to the source and take it in for yourself. What I'm doing is trying to arouse interest, trying to give you my perspective on it, This channel in part is about my journey as I learn this information. I haven't had a lot of time, and I haven't spent years going through it, and I'm not an expert. But I'm 70 years old. I've looked at other paradigms, and I've been involved in other paradigms, and I've promoted other paradigms. And why did I switch to this one? You know, part of my exposition is going to be about that, about the profound evidence that, you know, what comes through Elena is truth. And it's not just that I like her, which I do. I think she's an amazing being, right? So I don't have criticisms of Elena. I mean, if I do, they're extremely minor and picky, and there's no need and to mention them, and no benefit in doing so. She's not absolutely perfect, but she's pretty wonderful, really amazing human, and I believe what she says. I have reasons for believing what she says. I talked about Tesla's, or not Tesla's, Robert Sepper's video in the previous installment of my uploads to this channel. And that video, it doesn't talk about the Galactic Federation per se, but it's completely in line with what I've learned from Elena and other sources I deem dependable, reliable, truthful. So, and it brings in a lot of evidence from human experience here on planet Earth, from our cultural milieu, right? So I view it as very, very supportive of the material as a whole to which I refer and from which I am drawing, and I'm giving you my commentary on it or bringing it to your attention, discussing it. And speaking of discussion, this is not all a one-way feed. If you have ideas, opinions, concerns, questions, anything like that, there's a comment section below that YouTube has generously provided, and I'm accepting comments, whatever their type. You can say, George, you're a lunatic. And I'll say, okay, thanks for your opinion. I'm peaceful, I'm loving, and I'm tolerant without being too tolerant. Okay. So there are limits, but people just say, I don't agree with you. Yeah, that's fine. If you want to say why you don't agree, that's fine too. So, anyway, I will cut this off because it's getting too long, and look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care of yourselves in the meantime. Be happy. Don't worry, be happy. That's a big part of my message. Bye for now.